Hi everyone, my name is Ingrid Paris-Hicklin, and I'm so glad you're watching Ingrid's World. On this show, meet Dr. Mary M. Gillam, a former member of the Department of Defense Senior Executive Service Corps, as well as a retired Air Force colonel. Dr. Gillam is an FPA board member, TV show host, inventor, and founder of Executive Leadership, Enterprise, and Management Services. Welcome to the show, Dr. Gillam. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Ingrid, for having me.
Well, first of all, I've always been amazed with your fantastic career. Tell us how you got started.
Well, let me just tell you a little bit
about yourself.
Myself.
Yes, please.
I'm originally from Roseboro, North Carolina, and only if you've been there will you know where this place is. But I was raised by my maternal grandmother, who I love to tell a little bit of her story because she encouraged me and inspired me. And but my grandmother was married at 14, and then she had 17 children. And then she was widowed at 48, and she did not think it robbery to then take in 4 of her little grandchildren, and we were all under the age of 6.
All under the age of 6?
Yes. And she said, by the help of the Lord, I'm going to raise those babies, keep them out of the orphanage or whatever. And so I just credit everything to my grandmother in terms of just being the person I am today, and my faith.
And your faith. Yes. And look where you are now. Yeah. Oh my word. A colonel.
Yes.
In the Air Force.
Yes.
What made you, first of all, select the Air Force?
Well, I'd love to tell that story too, because when I went off to college, I actually majored in chemistry, and then there were some kids out recruiting one day, and they were talking about the Air Force and all of that, and I had never thought about joining the military, and I loved what they were saying, and so I went over and I talked to the professor of aerospace studies, but then I had to explain my situation because I was supposed to actually go and work for Dow Chemicals when I retired, and well, when I graduated.
And you graduated from college.
So
wow.
The professor of aerospace studies met with my chairman of my chemistry department, and the representative from Dow Chemicals. And I often say that there was somebody at Dow Chemicals who really loved the military, because they allowed me to keep my scholarship, and then I was able to also pick up an Air Force scholarship, and I was able to go into the Air Force.
So you had a scholarship from Dow Chemical.
Yes, yes. And I was supposed to go and work for them.
And then you began your career in. Tell us about some of the things that you've done while serving in the Air Force.
When I first went into the Air Force, there was a shortage of what we call communications electronics officers, really the telecommunications and information systems career field. And so I ended up, even though I had an undergrad in chemistry, I got commissioned in comm electronics. And so I got the chance to command a lot of organizations as a officer. But I also got a chance to serve as a CIO, Chief Information Officer, a Director of Information Technology, project lead on a lot of systems programs. But in the military, you also have to do some career broadening things. And so I got to be a congressional liaison.
Oh my goodness.
I did political military affairs, and so I got a chance to travel all over Africa.
Oh my goodness.
So it was a really wonderful career. I enjoyed the military.
Oh my goodness. And now you retired from the military and then started a business?
Yes, I first started M2G, Dynamic Leadership Solutions, but before that I actually worked for Booz Allen, supporting the Air Force CIO's office. And then I went back into the government, and that's where I was a senior executive, and I was the Director of Information, the Director of Technology, Innovation, and Engineering.
Wow.
And, but I always had that entrepreneur bug that kept like bugging me.
Yes, exactly.
And so I applied for some programs with the Small Business Administration and got picked up for a program that's called VWise, but they concentrate on women veterans and helping them to start businesses. And I ended up getting selected for that, and I said, okay, bye-bye, government.
He said, bye-bye, government.
And I started M2G, Dynamic Leadership Solutions. And then I learned something that I always pass on to business leaders.
Yes.
And that is, make sure that your business name really identify what it is that you're doing.
Ooh, key.
Because I had a strong technology background, but yet when I started my first business, people thought that I was really in the human capital development area. And so I said, well, let me do some more work here. And that's how I ended up starting Executive Leadership Enterprise. And Management Services.
Which is different, yeah.
Yes.
It tells a lot, tells a story. So we have a couple wonderful things, I guess, part of what you've done. And am I correct to say that you're at Amazon #1?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I always loved to write, and so I started writing a lot of different books when I first got out of the military, and even while I was in too. And one of the first books that I wrote, it deals with women relationships. And that book went #1 on Amazon twice. And yeah, I was very, very excited
Women
about that.
in relationships?
Yes.
Okay.
It has a very distinct title.
Okay, I had to get that. That sounds like amazing. And am I correct, or did I read it wrong? 12 books you've written?
I've written about 12 different books now. And, but like I said, I always like to write. And my area was in women's relationships and in leadership and management development. And so I started writing a lot of books in the leadership space, and some of them made bestseller lists, but they didn't make it to #1. So, but the other book did. But I always enjoyed helping to develop and grow people. Even though I loved the technology things that I was doing, it was always that personal touch that I got when I was working with people one-on-one and things like that.
So tell us about this book here, How to Lead Without Alienating, Bullying, or Destroying Your Team.
You know, Ingrid, because I was a victim of workplace bullying, I said, yes, I wanted to write something that would help leaders to avoid those toxic behaviors that lead to the alienating, the bullying, and destruction of organizations.
Oh my goodness, so you've experienced it and then went off to write.
Yes, and when I interviewed a lot of people for the book anonymously, it was amazing that the stories that they were sharing with me were even some of my own personal experiences, but the things that they shared, it was just amazing that in today's age, we still have people who, for whatever reason, they think it's okay to bully their employees, and with the way they talk to them, the way they treat them. And in some cases, it was just mere jealousy. If a person thought they were going to lose their job, and they had a subordinate or employee that was maybe a little bit more advanced knowledge-wise or expertise and things like that, it was amazing how people began to show signs of jealousy, and they began to like alienate the person, take work away from the person. And it's like, okay, what happened?
Oh, so when they take work away, that's another form?
Yes, because they don't want them to get any more publicity than them. And so it was like this one particular individual, her boss just began to kind of like take away duties and things like that after she started getting a lot of visibility from some of the higher level bosses, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, maybe she'll start outshining me or something.
Oh my goodness.
And he just began to like criticize her in public and things like that. But before that, she was the perfect employee. So
but before that, she was a perfect employee, and then all of a sudden,
she got a little bit of visibility from the upper bosses, the more senior bosses, and then he started to just like, and I was like, what is going on?
Wow. That's really interesting. Yeah, because when I think of bullying, workplace bullying, I'm thinking people speaking harshly to you.
That happens.
That happens.
Oh, absolutely. What I found interesting in the research was that 61% of workplace bullies are bosses, and that was published by the Workplace Bullying Institute.
What?
But bullying in and of itself, people using harsh words, however they want to attack the person or persons, and it's on a continuous basis. And the goal is to inflict some level of either physical or mental or emotional harm.
Oh my goodness.
And that's where the words come
harsh.
in, the words.
Yeah, because that can really almost be something that can just disable you from that.
Absolutely. Because unfortunately, a lot of the people that I interviewed ended up leaving.
They went and they left.
They said it's not worth it. And then some of them, they try to alienate it. And in some particular cases, the bosses were just as, the senior bosses were just as guilty as their direct supervisor. So it just really depends on where you're working and what policies they have in place.
So is it more like a culture that becomes?
Absolutely. And that's one thing I talk about in the book. I tell people you really need to, leaders have to be responsible for that culture.
Yeah, I was seeing that, because I'm like, so it's a lot to be said about the culture of the organization.
Yes. I always tell leaders, I said, what you endorse is what you allow. So if you allow this kind of conversation to take place, if you allow those negative behaviors to take place, then you're endorsing it. That's the culture that you are creating.
Oh my goodness. So as a leader, it is your responsibility to what? To speak up?
Yes, to make sure that people understand what kind of culture that you want to exist by being the example that you want them to emulate and things like that. Because sometimes the leader is the one who's guilty, and then therefore the people think it's okay. Well, the leader's doing it, so why not go and say whatever I want to say? Because there was times when I was in leadership, I would chastise and I'm an equal opportunity chastiser.
Are you really?
It did not matter if she was female or if it was male, because I would tell even some of my females, I said, some of the things that you have posted in your area, suppose a man did that. So you want to make sure that you are creating a work environment that anybody can come in here and feel comfortable, because if you're in a leadership position. Yes.
Oh, I get it. So I just shouldn't be focused on, I need to be very sensitive to all male and female.
Right, especially if you're a female leader, because we all know the challenges that we have had. But sometimes, a lot of times the researchers just focus a lot on the males and the things that they do wrong. I say it's equal across the board. It's equal. Yes.
I know you're right. But what happens, if you have a colleague, both of you are senior managers, and your colleague is not ready? So have you ever had situations like that?
Oh my goodness!
Really?
And that's when you have to pull people aside and say, okay, now. I'm just throwing this name out. Okay, Joe, this is what I have observed, and maybe we need to sit down and talk. Is it okay if we talk? Because what you're saying or how you're treating your people, there's a prime case in the book that it was something that I personally observed, and I said, had the peers stepped in, had the boss of this director stepped in, or had the individuals who were being bullied even reported it, that would have changed the dynamics of that entire situation, because that particular director was out of control. And I was surprised that his peers, because he had a reputation of doing some really nasty things, and I was like, I know he had peers, and why didn't somebody
That's what I'm thinking,
step in and say something?
So as a leader, you also are responsible that if you have a peer, you have to step up.
I think you have a responsibility to that organization, that if you notice something that is out of control, then you have a responsibility to say something.
Amazing. So now you invented this amazing game that I know our viewers are looking at, and what led you to invent this game?
You know, Ingrid, that's a really good question because I got to thinking about Monopoly, I got to thinking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and some of those board games that have just been around.
Yes.
And I said, you know, from Monopoly, you kind of learn some basic things about financial management.
Yes.
And I got looking at in the leadership management space, and I said, there's nothing out there. And so I worked with my attorney to find, you do the research and everything. There was nothing out there that just taught basic leadership and team building kinds of principles, both the good and the bad.
Okay.
And then I got to looking at the fact that, you know, when we identify people that we want to promote and things like that, it costs a lot of money to invest in sending these people off to these programs and things like that. And I said, well, it would be great if we had some kind of tool that managers could use that you can sit down and you and I, we can play this game, and in the meantime,
we can play this game.
Learn things about leadership that I don't have to pay $1,000 or $1,500, which is what some organizations pay per person, to teach basic leadership and management principles. And so it's a very easy game.
So let's try.
Okay. So would you like to be yellow?
Yes,
and
please.
I'll be green. And so you get to throw.
Okay.
Okay,
so
six.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bad attributes.
So you get to turn that over.
Uh-oh. Ineffective leaders are self-focused versus team focused.
Right. And so what I failed to explain is that what you're trying to do, the goal is to collect all 20 of the good attributes.
Oh.
And so you would get one of these, I would have one, and you begin to mark them off. And so it's the person who is able to, you know, collect all of these quickly, and then that's the winner. But I also tell my clients is that it's not about the win, but the learn, because as you go around the board and you flip over the cards, you're learning something about leadership. Because if I stopped on the good attributes, for example, effective leaders, they set goals and the right priorities.
And the right priorities.
So it's about learning.
Self-focus and versus team focus.
Right. You want to be the first to collect these, but it's really about the learn as you're going around playing the board.
And so it sounds like you do. Okay, let's see what you get.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get to do 5 here. And so if we were actually keeping score, I would be able to write that one down, and I would mark that one off as decisive leads from the front.
Oh, leads from the front.
Yes. There's nothing like having a leader that understands what it means to lead from the front.
Well, I think when you said, well, about the bullying aspect, and you said, oh, you know, I've gone through that.
Yes.
And I said, oh my goodness. So you know firsthand, and then you did the, you know, the very important research about that.
And so what I also did with this is that there were a government agency that actually used this as part of their team building exercise. Because I tell people who are interested in the game is that if you were looking for a tool that you can use to just start the conversation, and this is just an icebreaker and things like that, or you can use it to educate as you go along. But I just love the fact that we can do a one-on-one, or we can do it as a team, and the whole idea is to be able to teach and train on the basic principles of leadership and team building.
So for instance, can an organization use this in a sense that, you know, maybe some members want to get around and play this game?
Because that's how the government agency did. And they were actually having a outside team building exercise. And so what they did was they had several copies of this set up on different tables. And so they had 4 people that were playing, because you were playing as teams. And so you would have 2 people, I would have 2 people, and we would be the first to try to, you know. And so, and then they had,
Interesting.
they had experienced leaders who were actually serving as the facilitators.
Oh,
and so as
very
they went
nice.
around, and when the emergent leaders who were playing had questions about, well, why does a leader have to be a critical thinker or something like that? And then you had the experienced leaders, the facilitators, they were answering the questions. And I was just sitting back like, wow.
Okay.
This is really how
That's
I
what it's all
envision
about.
this being. Because a lot of times when you say game, people thinking it's
Yeah,
something for
yeah,
your children,
yeah.
but it's really
This is not for children.
a tool.
No, and this is something that I certainly would be at ease using. Also, it's kind of fun. It's fun to me because, let's see. It's fun because it's dealing with a serious subject.
Yes, absolutely.
And it can be kind of sensitive
Right.
issue. So
And that's a really good thought that you expressed there, because what I was thinking too, like if there was a topic that one of my employees needed some future development in.
Right,
And I was
right.
like, okay, this is a way to tackle that without just coming off like, wow. And then whatever that issue is that I think that he or she needs to focus on, and if it's on the board, when we stop on that, and now, okay, we'll use Joe again. Now, Joe, I want you to put down your markers here.
Okay.
And I want you to just, let's talk about this one. And that may be the very one that I want to.
confident, humble.
I want him or her to focus on.
Confident,
Yes.
humble.
So whatever that
love
topic
it.
is that I want them to focus on, I said, when we get to that around the board, I want you to stop everything that you're doing. Now let's talk about why this particular attribute is important.
So I have three. So it's 1, 2, 3. Values people.
Yeah.
So what would I do? So so if I needed some help and counseling on this, what would you say to me?
I would say, okay, now Ingrid, and I would probably give you a scenario, but then I would say, now why do you think it's important? So it'll be that two-way conversation.
Okay.
That
I love it.
I value what you have to say.
Ah.
Why would that be important in the growth of this organization? And
Wow.
then we would just go back and forth. But what I like to do is always use scenarios to kind of identify the attribute and make it so that both of us can talk about it and add to
I
the
love it.
conversation.
Delegates power.
And delegates
And empowers. Delegates and empowers.
Have you ever met leaders that was just so power hungry, and they just
Yeah, yes, and I know they mean well, but how do you handle something like that?
And then what I do a lot of times is I tell them, we can really grow and expand when everybody is involved and engaged. But how can we really do that if maybe just one person is trying to do it all?
I understand.
And I would approach it from the
So
standpoint.
there's a positive approach.
Yes, exactly.
So it's not like you are not doing this very well. You're really bringing us down, but you're taking a very positive, uplifting, approach. And then you're looking at the capacity that you can build a larger capacity if you empower more
Absolutely.
people.
I think with the focus on diversity today, and it's really diversity of experiences that people bring to the table, because when everybody just try to focus simply on their experience, it doesn't really kind of help the organization grow, but we should try to value everybody.
And I have to say that these are just wonderful things. Trustworthy, passionate, time manager.
Yes.
Isn't that verbal and writing skills? Verbal and writing skills.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Great verbal and writing skills.
Because if you have to submit somebody, for example, for an award, and you can't even write, or you're trying to mentor others and you have a problem with your own writing and communication skills, and I just tell the person, whoever I'm coaching or whatever, is that maybe that's something that you may want to work on.
Okay.
So
it sounds like what you're doing is you have one that says honesty.
yes.
Honesty.
Yes.
Yeah, and sometimes have you ever had to say that kind of honest thing
Yes,
to?
absolutely. I said the only way
What?
we're going to grow is that we be honest with one another. Because, you know, being retired military, I still have that military that I have to sometimes like calm down.
But it's a good thing because you're on the board, and I think it helps keep everyone focused. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Honesty. Wow. Adhere to ethics and principles.
Yes. Absolutely. I did a show on the importance of ethics in leadership.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Visionary?
Yes.
You know how you're going to get there, huh? So so it's important to have that vision of where we want to be at.
Yes, absolutely.
I also say, to tell you the truth, even if you're in a small business, how appropriate is this to really just take a look at and use?
Yes.
This is phenomenal. Well, when did you invent this game?
I
What
started
year?
the concept in 2015, and it actually came out in 2017.
Continued success. Dr.
you.
Gillam,
Thank
you are amazing. I mean, and this is just something, an active listener. I love it. To get more information on Dr. Gillam, where do we find you?
Just go to drmarygillam.com.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show,
Thank you
Dr.
so
Gillam.
much for this opportunity, Ingrid.
Thank you. Educating our community
Thank
on
you.
leadership.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Dr. Gillam for being on the show and discussing the very complicated subject of leadership. My inspirational quote is from American statesman General Colin Powell: "Have a vision, be demanding." Thank you for watching Ingrid's World, and don't forget to friend us on Facebook and follow Ingrid's World VA in Twitter and Instagram. And if you miss an episode, you know what to do. Watch Ingrid's World on YouTube or at ingridsworld.org. Thanks for watching.